Hello friends, welcome to today's video in which I'm going to talk about my postpartum experience, sort of what my expectations were versus the reality. So I've got my notes here. I apologize if the lighting is not the best, but I've been meaning to get around to filming this for a while and I finally have the time, and today and the next couple of days are predicted to be sort of cloudy, so the lighting is not the greatest, but it's good enough, so bear with me. So I put this at the top of the list, and I think because this is the one that kind of surprised me the most, and that was how everyone talked about your organs feeling out of place right after you give birth, and for I think probably maybe the first day or so afterwards. And so I had all these tighter tank tops that people recommended wearing afterwards to kind of like help suck things in and not make it feel like your organs were just drooping, I guess, so to speak. And I didn't experience that. My stomach was still like sticking out a little bit afterwards, but I like my organs felt pretty much exactly the same as they did before. So yeah, that one took me by surprise. It sounded super uncomfortable, so I was nervous for what that was going to be like, and then it didn't happen. So I'm glad that it didn't happen, but that was definitely one that was different than I expected. So then the next thing that I have on here is the PERINEAL bottle. So I thought that I was going to desperately need this, the way that everyone talks about you have to have one of these, or the one at the hospital is only so get this one. And it was because the expectation was that everything was going to burn really bad. So of course I had the one that everyone recommends. It's the Freedom brand. And I'll try and do a separate video of all the products that I found helpful in postpartum. But so, and then I did get one from my midwife. So I had two, and if it's the same as what they give you at the hospital, the one that my midwife gave me, it really wasn't that bad. But I will admit that the Freedom one, I liked that it has kind of an angle to the spout, and then also that the spout part is collapsible. That was handy. But I will say that because everyone was saying like do not go to the bathroom the first time without using one of these, I was expecting it to burn really bad, and that, you know, it helps immensely but you can still feel it and all this stuff. So I was so nervous for that, but then it actually wasn't that bad. And yes, I used it, but I could also just kind of tell that it wasn't like masking the pain as much as I would have thought. So I had and there were times that I tried it without because I was in a hurry and didn't want to take the time to fill up the bottle, and it really actually wasn't that bad. And now there was of course a little bit of discomfort, but not nearly what I expected it to be. So that was obviously a welcome surprise, but I still recommend having it, and because I still used it, so it was a good thing to have. On a related note, another thing that I was also quite nervous for was my first bowel movement, because I did have a 2nd-degree tear, and of course, you know, had heard that it can be really bad and that, you know, people avoid it and then you get constipated and then it makes it even worse. But I made sure to do things to help that situation including taking magnesium supplements and eating high fiber foods. So if I had been constipated, I would have been a lot more nervous for my first bowel movement. And so obviously, like, I could kind of tell right beforehand if I was going to be or not. And yeah, everything was fine. Like, it really didn't even hurt at all. It felt a little bit different, but it didn't hurt. So I was very thankful for that. So the next thing I have is kind of the resting period to help heal. And what I was told is that I should be in, like, basically on bed rest for the first 5 days, then on at least on a couch for the next 5 days, and then either near a bed or a couch for the next 5 days. So a total of 15 days and of kind of, you know, resting and really not doing much for walking except for to the bathroom. So that, like, I knew, you know, that I wasn't going to be able to be like up and running a marathon or anything, but I wasn't expecting that I was going to basically feel like I needed to be on bed rest for that long. And I'm glad that I listened, and because I've been told that if you overdo it, that you'll regret it afterwards. And I can say from experience that when I was not able to rest because it was out of my control, which was because we ended up having an ER visit and subsequent NICU stay, which I have that story posted, so I'll link that video below. But when, you know, that couldn't be helped, I definitely set back my healing progress because of that. So I definitely recommend that when you can, you're resting. And even though it's tempting to, you know, if you have the opportunity to get up and clean or whatever, I definitely recommend not doing that if you are still in the early stages. So it's hard, but ultimately it will take that much longer to heal if you don't take the time to rest. So let's see. Then I, of course, had been told that heavy bleeding is common afterwards, but I think it's different once you actually experience it, because being told that it's going to happen and trying to be prepared for it is different than actually going through it. So even though it was something that I was aware was a very likely, almost like guaranteed situation, I was not prepared for like just exactly what it would feel like. And so I'm glad that I had the adult diapers, basically. And again, if I make a video with the products that I use, I will link those because I really liked the ones that I found on Amazon. Also, the clots that I passed, I was not prepared. Seeing it kind of makes you nervous because it's just not something that you're used to. So that was just not something I was prepared to actually see and deal with. So also, one of the other things in regards to bleeding is that I expected the heavy bleeding to last longer, but really I was done with the adult diapers around probably day 5, and then was able to switch to regular pads for, I think, another 3-4 days. And then after that was able to get away with just using liners. So I definitely expected to have to, I just didn't expect to be able to use liners as quickly as I was able to. So I appreciated that, because I absolutely cannot stand wearing pads, even the regular pads or heavy pads. I can't stand. And even liners bug me a little bit, but they're obviously much less noticeable than regular pads. So the next thing I have is the swelling. And I think for the most part, I expected things to look the way they did, but I didn't expect them to feel the way they did. So sitting and walking, I could just kind of tell that I felt swollen, and it was just an uncomfortable sensation to have to deal with. And I was thinking about the padsicles that I got being used to help with the pain, basically. But obviously, I think the padsicles are also meant to help with the swelling. And like, I knew that things were going to look different, especially the first couple of days. I'm not sure I expected it to be quite to the degree that it was for me, because honestly, when I was getting stitched up, at least for when they were going through and explaining to me what they were going to have to do, you know, basically assessing everything, because I had a home birth and they actually stitched me up right here on this bed. But as long as it's a 2nd degree or 1st degree tear, then they can do it. The midwife can do it. Otherwise, if it's a 3rd or 4th degree tear, then they have to send you to the hospital and have it done there. So that was, you know, one of the reasons why they were assessing it and, you know, talking me through. And luckily it was not a 3rd or 4th degree tear, so they were able to do it. But I was not really feeling anything as they were talking me through, because of course, you know, they were gently touching the area and I could not feel what they were doing. So, and I think actually the first time I realized that I was kind of numb in that area already was when the first time I went to the bathroom afterwards, and I patted myself dry. They say that you're not supposed to wipe, to be gentle with that area. And so I patted myself dry and I could not feel that because it was so swollen. So in regards to that, I definitely found that the padsicles helped, and I got reusable ones. They're basically kind of like ice packs. So I will include those in my product essentials video, but I did not want to have to go through the effort of making mine, so that's why I got those. And then the other thing is that I didn't expect the swelling to last as long as it did, more like internally, because I remember looking at things with a mirror not too long after, and you know, things looked to be expected at that stage, but not like horrible. And then a few days after, and things were already looking a lot better, and even a week and a half later or something, it was like things from the outside basically looked back to normal, but the tissues that were just a little bit more internal stayed swollen for longer than I expected. So, but I guess that can happen. I just was not aware. Okay, so the next thing is itching, which I did not think that things were going to itch during the healing process, but if I had thought about it, I think I would have realized, because I know that when you get a skin injury, that itching can be a part of the healing process. So if I had thought about it, I probably would have realized that that was a possibility, but it just didn't occur to me. Either way, it was annoying, but the things that I found that helped were continuing to use the perineal bottle even after things weren't like burning anymore, but just, you know, it just kind of helped to like keep the area clean, I guess. And also the sitz baths and the padsicles, all those things definitely helped. So the next thing was just general soreness in that area. It lasted longer than I expected, but it wasn't something that was constant. So things, I guess, I thought that they healed at the rate that I anticipated them to, but then some of the soreness lingered, and I wasn't expecting that. And it would just be random and very intermittent and wouldn't last very long. It would just be like a couple seconds where I'd feel like a twinge or something in that area. It's just, by the time I was able to be like up and moving and walking, which was, you know, a little over a couple weeks after, and, you know, going on walks and stuff again, even a month later, there would still just be random twinges that I was not expecting. And a lot of it too, I think, was that because I tore, the tissue in that area was regrowing, and so there was some scar tissue, and scar tissue can be tougher. So I think with walking and stuff and just like, you know, moving that area around, I think it kind of is expected that you might feel a little bit of discomfort for a few seconds here and there. Okay, so this was another big one that caught me off guard, and that was the abdominal separation. I thought that it was basically a guarantee that when you're pregnant, your abdominal muscles separate, and quite a bit. I also didn't know that, you know, I would be able to know how much it happened, but at one of my follow-up appointments, my midwife checked that area and was able to tell me that I hardly had any. Like, I think she said it was like the width of her finger. So I was just surprised that it was possible to hardly have any at all. So because it was just something that gets talked about a lot, and so I just kind of assumed that it came with the territory. So just thought it would be something I'd have to deal with. So, okay, so this one also caught me off guard. Dry skin. I don't know if it was from breastfeeding or postpartum hormones or what, but my skin was so dry. And I think it started relatively soon after, and I think that might be why I associated it, like I thought it might be being caused by the breastfeeding, because I think it started around the time that my milk came in, which was about a little over 4 days after. And I guess it was just because, like, I know that your body needs a lot more water when you're breastfeeding, but either way, it was so, like, my skin was like it is in the winter. It was awful. Luckily, it has since gone away, but I was definitely having to do the same skincare routine that I usually have to do in the winter. So that was a bit of a pain. So another thing that, and you know, this maybe a little TMI, but the scent down there was just a little different, especially while I was still bleeding, which, you know, I kind of expected it to smell the same way it does on your period, but then I thought about it and I realized that you're getting rid of not just what you normally do on your period. You know, you just had a baby, so there's a lot of other different things that your body's getting rid of that are not normally there for a period. So I think that was why that was happening, and it definitely subsided after the bleeding ended. So if that happens to you, unless it's, you know, like, you know your own body, and if it smells offensive to you and you can tell it's not just like a stronger or like a different odor, that it's bad, then that's definitely worth a call to your doctor or your midwife. Let's see. Okay, so another thing is with breastfeeding. I, of course, had heard that it can be hard, but I think it's just another one of those things that you don't quite understand the level of it until you've experienced it. There's a lot of mixed messages out there. There's different techniques, there's different advice, and everybody thinks that, you know, what they've learned is the best way, but everyone's bodies are different and everyone's experiences are different. So it can be hard to navigate that journey and try and figure out what works best for you, because there's just all like these different, you know, messages coming at you, and everybody means well, but something that worked well for somebody might not work well for you. And even with different lactation consultants. So, you know, I guess my 2 cents on this is try not to let it get you down. And if it's not the route that's right for you, don't feel guilty about that. Obviously, fed is best. And if what you're hearing is not working for you, don't be afraid to try something else. So, and speaking of breastfeeding, I feel like everyone talks about how it's so great when their baby sleeps through the night for the first time, or, you know, sleeps for at least 6 hours, or, you know, just like those longer periods. But what they don't talk about is that if you are breastfeeding, that you still have to get up and pump, because if you, and again, this is another thing where every person's experience could be different, because every body is unique, but the advice out there is that you not go that long without pumping, because it can affect your supply. So it's, yeah, I feel like it's a little bit misleading to talk about how great it is when your baby sleeps through the night, because just because your baby sleeps through the night doesn't mean that you get to if you are breastfeeding. So and, you know, if you don't suffer from insomnia like I do, then it probably wouldn't affect you as much. But my problem is that I get up to pump and then I can't fall back asleep. So such is life right now. Which, you know, speaking of, I also thought that the lack of sleep that I was going to be dealing with, I expected it to be really hard on me, because my experience has been that when I don't get enough sleep, it really affects how well I can function during the day. So for whatever reason, I think it probably, again, just comes with the territory that after you've had a baby, like some sort of switch is flipped, and I was just able to deal with the lack of sleep, and it wasn't affecting me the way that it used to. And that's not to say that I wasn't, you know, that I couldn't tell that I was tired. It just wasn't quite as draining as it was before I had a baby. So that was a nice surprise, I guess. Obviously, I would prefer to get enough sleep, but if I'm not going to be able to get enough sleep some nights, then it's good that I know that I can still function during the day, because obviously taking care of a baby, you have to be able to function. So I guess I'm going to skip down to this one because it's related again with breastfeeding. I was not expecting to have to deal with, and I think it's kind of like a random thing, so maybe that's why it's not talked about, but I know for a fact that I have friends who have dealt with the same thing, because after it happened to me, I was talking about it to them. But showers while you're breastfeeding. The first time that I leaked after taking a shower, I kind of thought it was like maybe just a fluke, but then it kept happening, and it's quite annoying because you've just showered and then all of a sudden you're leaking breast milk all over your body, and you've just taken a shower. So and it would happen so quickly after, like within minutes after turning off the water, that it got to a point where I was trying to rush through it, and even that didn't work. So I have these shells, these nipple shells, and a thing like that you put over your like put over the nipple, and it catches any of the milk that's leaked from your breast. And unfortunately, you have to have a bra on for it to stay, otherwise there's no way for it to stay in place. So I had like this very specific setup where I had them ready to go and sitting on the sink right outside of the shower, and I had my bra ready to go. I didn't even take the time to dry off my entire body. I dried off the top half of me, I put my bra on, and then I put the shells in, because that's how quickly it would happen. So I finally mastered the technique, but it is a pain to have to deal with. Of course, ever since I've mastered my technique, it really hasn't happened that much, because, you know, that's just how life goes. But yeah, just another interesting surprise. Okay, and so, all right, so then the next thing I wanted to mention was hormones. I definitely expected mood swings that involved being really sad or angry or just feeling kind of lonely. And, you know, I was hoping that it wasn't going to be, you know, really intense, but I was expecting it, because that is something that's talked about. So I was just trying to, you know, mentally prepare for myself. The one thing that I did not expect with the hormones is to kind of randomly be so incredibly overjoyed and filled with love for my baby that like my body just wouldn't know what to do with those feelings, and they would just suddenly come out my eyeballs, I guess. And it's because I would just all of a sudden notice myself crying, but I wasn't sad or upset about anything. I was just, you know, I'd be, you know, staring at her and thinking about how much I love her, and then I would just start crying. And it's like, I'm not sad or upset, but it's like I just feel so much love for her. It's like my body just doesn't know what to do with it, and it just comes out my eyeballs, I guess. So I think obviously that's better than, you know, having it be like the hormones causing the, you know, anger or loneliness or frustration or something. But it was just unexpected. So, okay, so then last but not least, again, probably a little TMI, but you know, given the topic, I think it's to be expected. So, sex. And the reason I wanted to mention it was because everything that I had read in the forums, from the pregnancy apps that I had and stuff, everyone was saying it is going to feel different or it is going to be painful. Use a ton of lube. That was like the #1 recommendation, and to just expect for it to either hurt or be very uncomfortable the first time. And so I, of course, was expecting that to be the case. And we waited the recommended amount of time, the 6 weeks, and we did use lubrication because, of course, I was nervous, and I have to say it felt pretty much exactly the same as it did before. Now, we don't usually use lube, so that felt different, but it was not painful by any means. I could tell that things felt a little bit different in the sense that, oh, we haven't done this for, you know, a little over 6 weeks, but it was not painful. I mean, I think for your first time, if you're nervous, there's absolutely nothing wrong with using lube. But, you know, I think that any discomfort that I felt in my head at first was because I built it up in my head, and I was so nervous, because once I kind of let that go and like stopped tensing, the discomfort went away too. And I never felt any pain throughout it. So all that to say that every person's experience is different. So definitely, I still recommend using lube, but don't go into it thinking that you're absolutely guaranteed to feel pain. So still, obviously, take it slow. And if you're uncomfortable and don't want to keep going, or aren't ready to try yet, then don't. But I want to give people out there a little peace of mind that it's not a guarantee that it is going to hurt. So I think that wraps up everything. If you have any experiences that I did not mention that took you by surprise, that you think other people would benefit from knowing, leave those in the comments below. Also, if you have any questions, leave those below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.